I'd like to share with you about one of my favorite tools that helped me a lot when I was first developing my reading skills and abilities, consciously that is, and that is a pointer. Why it may be a good idea to use a pointer to point at the text while you're reading, what type of a pointer to use, how to use a pointer, and where to point with it. So let's first talk about why it may be a good idea to consider pointing at the text while reading. Well, here's the thing. First of all, whenever we are reading, we perform these eye movements which are called saccades. And the thing is that these saccades, they're not very linear, they're not very consistent. However, whenever we use a pointer, we have this one item to now follow track with our eyes. Our very movements that we perform whenever we read become a little bit more consistent. So this is one reason to consider using a pointer when reading. Another one is related to our mental focus and the fact that our mental focus usually follows our visual focus. And by bringing our attention onto the pointer while reading, this narrowing of the focus is related to the secretion of norepinephrine and acetylcholine in the brain, which in turn helps us be more focused, more alert, and also gather more information from whatever point we've fixated our gaze on, in this case the text. Alright, so this is all related as to why would you want to use a pointer when reading. Now, what type of a pointer you may want to use? Well, the short answer is something thin. Why, you may ask? The simple answer is so you can see more from what you're reading. Why, you may ask again? Let me explain. First reason is related to our memory, which is involved in knowing where and what we can find in the text while reading. So whenever we're reading something, we're actually building this mental representation of the text. We do it subconsciously, but it happens nevertheless. And we do that so whenever we need to go back in the text or do what are known as regressions, we're more precise with those backward movements in the text. And yes, what I am saying means that not making regressions whenever you're reading is actually not that good of an advice. Research studies have shown that not allowing yourself to do regressions may actually affect your comprehension in a negative way. And if you pay attention, you may notice that the problem may be related to your lack of focus while reading or your general understanding of the text, and not the regressions themselves. And skilled readers are not better because they don't perform regressions, but because they're more accurate with going exactly where they need back in the text and then resuming their reading faster. So this is one reason why you want to keep your text generally visible while reading and why you want to use a thin pointer. The other reason is related to something which is known as the parafoveal on foveal effect. So here's the thing, whenever we are reading, we gather the most information about the text from a zone which is known as the foveal region, which is about the size of our thumb. Now around that region is another one which is known as the parafoveal region, and although the information we gather from it while reading is not as precise as the foveal one, we still gather information from it. And if you somehow limit your vision, you're also limiting the amount of information that you can gather while reading. And this is actually one of the main critiques of RSVP software and apps where you have words presented one by one or in groups, just like you're seeing right now. And so you cannot benefit from that parafoveal and foveal effect, and you also cannot do regressions whenever you need them. And so my advice to you here is two or threefold. First of all, whenever you're reading, don't cover any of the text that you're reading. And then the other thing is use a thin pointer so you can preserve as much as possible that parafoveal and foveal effect. And then the other thing is that whenever you need to do regressions, you're more accurate and faster in performing them. Right, so let's move on to how to use a pointer now. And the best advice that I can give you here is that you want to simulate the movements that our eyes perform when reading. The thing is that whenever we read, our eyes don't move smoothly. In fact, as I already mentioned, we perform jumps known as saccades. And so you want to imitate those jumping motions with the pointer. You don't want to move it as if underlining the text, but jumping between words or maybe tapping rhythmically. So that's the first thing. Move the pointer the same way that you move your eyes when reading. And then the other thing that you want to make sure is that those taps that you're doing are rhythmical. And here's the thing, that external rhythm that you're generating, even after the second tap, it will translate into an internal rhythm that you'll start to follow while reading. And this is actually one of the things that helped me be more consistent, more focused while reading, and in turn reading faster. Now here's an additional thing. If at a given point you lose yourself in the text, you want to stop with the pointer, but keep your gaze on the pointer again. If you want to make a regression, maybe try to make it a little bit more conscious, but whatever you do, keep your gaze around the pointer or at the pointer. This will help you stay in the zone, and whenever you catch up, resume your reading more smoothly. Now, having said that, let's talk about where to point with the pointer while reading. The first thing to to note here is that you do not want to point at each and every word in the text. So one strategy is to point only at the meaning-carrying words. And that sounds somehow challenging to you. Here's something interesting. What research have actually shown is that around 30% of all the words in a text never receive direct attention anyways. So word skipping is actually a very natural process, and it occurs for a number of different reasons. It may be related to our previous knowledge of the text, it may be related to our experience and command of the language in which the text is written, or our understanding of the context of the text, or even the parafoveal-on-foveal effect that we mentioned earlier. And because of that, when we read, we can recognize words not isolated from one another, but in groups. We can also make educated guesses of what words are going to be used, or the meaning with which words are used, and so we can skip them. And if you want to take everything that we just talked about to the next level, you can actually start pointing between every 2 to 3 words. This is again based on research, and we know that with practice, experienced readers can take up to 20 symbols at a saccade, which is roughly about 2 to 3 words, depending on the length of the words. And because of that, here's another sort of hidden trick. Whenever you start and end a line, don't point at the first and the last word of a line, but instead point between the first 2 and the last 2 words. And again, you want to do that because in doing so, you're training yourself to get the most out of your visual ability and eye movements. And this is the how of how you can use a pointer. And that is also the last point of this video. And if you want to learn more about reading, you can click on one of these videos. And anyway, at this point, I thank you sincerely for watching. Keep it bright, and I'll see you in the next one.